Cybella didn't know the Alpha King could smell a lie before the words finished leaving someone's mouth. She didn't know he'd been expecting a golden-haired beauty with a wolf so powerful it made grown men tremble, and that the moment her plain brown cloak crossed his threshold, every plan he'd made for this alliance shattered. And she definitely didn't know that being sent as her family's disposable disappointment would awaken something inside her that would bring the most feared pack in the realm to its knees. All she knew, standing in the great hall of Valdris Keep with her father's deceit still ringing in her ears, was that she had 3 days to convince a king not to execute her for a lie she hadn't told. 12 hours earlier, Sibella had been exactly where she belonged. Nowhere. The East Tower of Harken Manor had been her home for as long as she could remember. Not a prison. Her father was always careful to clarify. Simply quarters befitting her condition. The condition of being born under a blood moon. The condition of never manifesting a wolf when every other child in the bloodline shifted by 16. The condition of being so thoroughly ordinary that her own mother had wept at her naming ceremony, mourning the daughter she'd expected instead of the one she'd received. Sibella had stopped expecting anything different years ago. She spent her days in the tower's modest library, reading texts her tutors had abandoned when it became clear she'd never need political training. She took her meals alone, brought by servants who avoided her eyes, not from cruelty, but from the particular discomfort people felt around those marked by misfortune. As if her curse might be contagious. Her sister Orinthia visited sometimes. Golden Orinthia, with her amber wolf and her sunshine laugh, and her face that made poets weep. She'd sweep into Sibella's tower in a cloud of expensive perfume, chattering about suitors and gowns and the terribly important alliance father was arranging with the Valdris pack. "He's supposed to be a monster, you know," Orinthia had said just last week, examining her reflection in Sibella's window. "The Alpha King. They say he killed his own uncle to take the throne, tore his throat out with his bare teeth." She'd shuddered delicately. "But father says his territory controls the mountain passes, so I suppose I'll have to endure him." Sibella had said nothing. What was there to say? Orinthia would marry a king, monster or not. Sibella would remain in her tower until her father found some minor lord desperate enough to overlook her deficiencies in exchange for the Harken name. That was the order of things. Predictable. Unchangeable. Until the night everything changed. She'd been reading by candlelight when the door burst open, not a servant's polite knock, but the violent crack of wood against stone. Her father stood in the doorway, his face purple with rage, 2 guards flanking him like he expected her to run. "Get up," Lord Harken snarled. "Pack what you can carry, you leave at dawn." "Father, I don't understand." "Your sister," he spat the word like poison, "has made herself unavailable for her duties. Selfish, stupid girl. After everything I've done, everything I've planned." He stopped himself, visibly wrestling for control. "The Alpha King expects a bride tomorrow. He will receive one." Sibella's blood went cold. "You can't mean—" "You will go to Valdris. You will present yourself as my daughter. And you will pray that the king values this alliance enough to overlook what he's actually receiving." The insult barely registered beneath the terror. "He'll know, father. The moment he sees me, he'll know I'm not Orinthia." Lord Harken smiled then, thin and cruel. "Then I suggest you find a way to make yourself useful before he decides you're not worth the trouble." He left without another word. And Sibella, who had spent 22 years learning to expect nothing, realized she'd been wrong. She should have expected this, to be sacrificed when something more valuable needed protecting. The great hall of Valdris Keep was nothing like the elegant receiving rooms of her father's manor. Where Harken Manor favored gilt and silk and the soft prettiness of southern architecture, this place was hewn from the mountain itself. Dark stone walls, iron chandeliers thick with half-melted candles, and pelts of massive wolves covering every surface. The air smelled of pine smoke and something wilder, something that made the hollow space where Sibella's wolf should have lived ache with strange longing. She'd been escorted here by Valdris guards who hadn't spoken a single word during the 2-day journey. They'd looked at her when she'd emerged from her carriage, looked at her brown hair and unremarkable features and travel-stained cloak. And something had flickered across their faces. Confusion, then suspicion, then a careful blankness that was somehow worse. They knew. Of course they knew. Everyone in the realm knew what Orinthia Harkin looked like. Bards wrote songs about her. Painters begged to capture her likeness. Sibella looked like a servant who'd stolen her mistress's seat. Now she stood in the center of that cavernous hall, surrounded by wolves who'd gathered to witness their king receive his bride, and felt every single one of their eyes measuring her, finding her wanting. 3 days, she reminded herself. Father said I have 3 days to prove useful. I just need to survive 3 days. Then the crowd parted, and she forgot how to breathe. The Alpha King descended from a stone dais at the far end of the hall, moving with the fluid grace of a predator who'd never needed to rush. He was tall, far taller than she'd expected, with shoulders broad enough to block out the torchlight behind him, and hair the color of a midnight sky, cropped close at the sides, but longer on top, falling across a forehead marked by a thin scar. His features were severe: sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from the same stone as his fortress, and a mouth set in a hard line that suggested he'd forgotten how to smile years ago. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Pale gray, almost silver, like winter moons trapped in a human face. And they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to flee, to drop to her knees, to do anything other than stand there as he approached with that silent, lethal stride. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the way his nostrils flared slightly as he inhaled. Smelling me, she realized with a jolt of panic. He's scenting me. You are not Orinthia Harkin. His voice was low, rough-edged like gravel wrapped in velvet, and it wasn't a question. The hall went deathly silent. Sibella's throat closed. Every instinct screamed at her to lie, to spin some tale about illness or transformation or mistaken identity. But something in those winter moon eyes told her he would know, that he already knew, and this was simply her chance to confirm exactly how foolish her father thought him. No, she said quietly. I'm not. A murmur rippled through the watching crowd. The guards who'd escorted her shifted, hands moving toward weapons. The Alpha King didn't blink. Who are you? Sibella Harkin, Orinthia's younger sister. She lifted her chin, refusing to cower even as terror clawed at her chest. My sister became unavailable. Our father sent me in her place. Unavailable. The word dripped with contempt. And Lord Harkin thought I wouldn't notice the substitution? I believe he hoped you'd value the alliance more than the specific bride. Something flickered in that pale gray gaze, surprise perhaps, at her honesty, or maybe consideration of how slowly he should kill her. Your father is either very brave or very stupid. The latter, Your Majesty, definitely the latter. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. A guard inhaled sharply. Somewhere behind her, someone made a choked sound of disbelief. But the Alpha King? The Alpha King's severe mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. She doubted his face remembered how to form one, but something close. You're not afraid of me, he observed. I'm terrified of you, Sibella corrected. I simply don't see how showing it would help my situation. He studied her for a long moment, those storm-colored eyes roaming her face like he was reading a language he'd never encountered. She felt exposed down to her bones, certain he could see every flaw and every inadequacy, every reason her own family had deemed her disposable. Then he leaned closer, inhaling deeply, and his eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Interesting, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Before she could ask what he meant, he straightened and addressed the hall. The Harkin bride will remain as a guest while I consider how to respond to her father's creativity. His gaze cut back to Sibella, unreadable. 3 days. After that, I'll decide what you're worth. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the center of 100 hostile stares, her heart pounding and her mind spinning with a single thought. What did he smell on me? They gave her a room in the East Wing. Not the dungeons, which she'd half expected. Not the servants' quarters, which would have been appropriate for a failed substitution. But an actual chamber with a feather bed, a copper tub, and windows overlooking the pine forests that carpeted the valley below. Sibella paced the stone floor for hours, waiting for guards to come and drag her to execution. They never did. When the knock finally came, it wasn't guards at all. The king requests your presence in his study. The servant who spoke was a young woman with dark braids and watchful eyes. She didn't look at Sibella with hostility exactly, more like cautious curiosity, the way one might observe an unfamiliar creature that hadn't yet proven whether it would bite. Requests, Sibella repeated, or demands. I've never known His Majesty to request anything twice. Fair enough. She followed the servant through corridors carved directly into the mountain, past tapestries depicting wolves, hunting beneath strange moons and battles fought in snow so thick the figures seemed to dissolve into white. Valdres Keep was ancient in a way that Harkin Manor, for all its pretensions, could never match. This place had been carved by the first wolves, back when shifting was still a gift from the gods rather than bloodline inheritance. Sibella felt its age in her bones, pressing against that hollow space inside her where her wolf should have lived. The servant stopped before a heavy oak door. Through here. Sibella entered alone. The study was smaller than she'd expected, lined with books and scrolls and maps pinned to every available surface. A fire crackled in a massive hearth, casting dancing shadows across the walls, and there, silhouetted against the flames, stood the Alpha King. He'd removed his formal coat. In just his linen shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, he looked less like a monarch and more like a warrior taking a rare moment of rest. The firelight caught the scar on his forehead, traced the hard line of his jaw, and made his eyes glow like molten metal. Close the door. Sibella obeyed, her heart hammering. You're not what I expected, he said without turning. I spent 6 months negotiating this alliance, studied every report, every portrait, and every whisper about Orinthia Harkin. I knew her favorite color, her preferred wines, and the names of the 3 suitors she rejected last spring. He turned then, and his gaze pinned her in place. I prepared for a beautiful political weapon who'd spent her entire life training to manipulate men like me. Instead, I received you. The disappointing sister. Yes, I'm aware. Disappointing. He said the word slowly, tasting it. Is that what they told you? Among other things. The king moved closer, each step deliberate, predatory. Sibella forced herself not to retreat. When I scented you in the great hall, he said quietly, I expected to smell fear, deceit, the particular desperation of a woman sent to her death. He stopped an arm's length away. Do you know what I actually found? Sibella shook her head, not trusting her voice. Power. The word landed like a physical blow. Dormant. Buried so deep you probably don't even know it exists. But it's there, coiled inside you like a sleeping serpent. His eyes searched hers. You're not wolfless, Sibella Harkin. You're something else entirely. Something I've only encountered once before in my life. That's impossible. I was tested. Every healer in 3 territories examined me. Healers look for wolves. They wouldn't recognize what you carry if it rose up and bit them. Sibella's head spun. What are you saying? I'm saying your family didn't send me the wrong daughter. His voice dropped lower, gravelly with something that might have been wonder or warning. They sent me exactly what I needed. They just didn't know it. Before she could respond, he turned away, moving to his desk where a stack of correspondence waited. She caught a glimpse of broken seals, urgent scrawl, a map with several locations circled in red ink. 3 months ago, members of my pack began disappearing. Wolves who ventured too far from the keep. Border patrols, hunting parties. His jaw tightened. At first I thought it was the Ashcroft pack pushing our boundaries. Then I found the bodies. Bodies? Drained. Not of blood. Of something else. Their wolves torn out of them while they still lived. He looked at her over his shoulder, and she saw it then. Beneath the controlled ferocity, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. 15 wolves dead, my people, my responsibility. And every seer, every tracker, every gifted wolf I've consulted has found nothing. The trail goes cold before it begins. Understanding dawned, terrible and thrilling at once. You think I can find them, whatever's doing this? I think you have a gift that's been suppressed your entire life, one that might see what others cannot. He faced her fully. I think your family locked you in a tower because they sensed what you were and didn't understand it. I think they called you broken because you made them afraid. Sabella's throat tightened. 2 decades of isolation, of whispered pity, of being told she was less than nothing. And this stranger, this terrifying king, looked at her like she might be the answer to something. And if you're wrong, she whispered, if I'm exactly as useless as they said, then we're both out of options. His expression didn't soften, but something shifted in his voice. But I don't think I'm wrong, Sabella. And I suspect, somewhere beneath all those years of being told what you couldn't do, you don't think so either. Sabella stared at the maps, the circled locations, and the urgent evidence of a king running out of time. What exactly are you proposing? You've passed your 3 days of judgment, he said. Now I'm proposing something else. Stay. Not as a bride. That arrangement died the moment you stepped out of that carriage. But as an ally. He straightened, his posture shifting from weary commander to negotiating monarch. Help me find what's killing my wolves. Unlock whatever gift you've buried. Give me 3 weeks. And in return, my freedom. The words came out fierce, startling them both. Not marriage to some minor lord my father picks. Not returning to that tower. Actual freedom. Gold enough to disappear. Papers that prove I'm beholden to no one. The king studied her with new interest. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for 12 years. Silence stretched between them. The fire crackled and popped. 3 weeks, he said finally. Give me 3 weeks to find the source of these attacks. If you help me, if your gift proves genuine, I'll give you everything you've asked for. Gold, papers, a ship to anywhere in the realm you want to go. His jaw tightened. And I'll personally ensure your father can never touch you again. And if I can't help? If this gift you think you sense is nothing but wishful thinking, then you're no worse off than you were when you arrived. I'll still release you. Just without the gold. You could simply throw me in a dungeon. Force me to comply. I could. He didn't deny it. But forced gifts have a way of twisting. Becoming unreliable. If you're what I think you are, I need you willing. He extended his hand, palm up. Do we have an agreement? Sabella looked at his hand. Large, calloused, marked with small scars that spoke of a king who fought alongside his warriors rather than behind them. Taking it would mean trusting a man she'd known for mere hours. A man who could still decide she was worthless and dispose of her without consequence. But staying meant a chance to discover what she truly was. To prove that every cruel whisper, every pitying glance, every locked door had been wrong. She clasped his hand. The moment their palms touched, Something crackled through her, a pulse of energy so sharp she nearly jerked away. It felt like lightning trapped beneath skin, like every nerve in her body suddenly waking from a long sleep. Her vision flickered, and for one disorienting heartbeat, she saw him differently. Shadows and light intertwined, a wolf made of silver flame burning just beneath his human surface, and wounds. Old, deep wounds that had nothing to do with flesh. Lonely, she realized with shocking clarity. He's so terribly lonely. Then the vision vanished, and she was just Sibella again, gripping the hand of a king who was staring at her with something very close to shock. "You felt that?" she breathed. "Yes." His voice had gone hoarse, almost strained. He released her hand too quickly, stepping back like she'd burned him. 3 weeks. We start tomorrow." He turned toward the door, dismissing her, but not before she caught the slight tremor in his hands. Whatever had passed between them, the Alpha King was just as shaken as she was, and he clearly had no intention of explaining why. Sibella woke to gray dawn light and the unfamiliar sensation of having slept through the night. In her tower at Harken Manor, sleep had always been fitful, a shallow thing, interrupted by cold draughts and darker thoughts. Here, wrapped in furs that smelled of cedar and pine, she'd fallen into a dreamless void and emerged feeling more rested than she had in years. She didn't know what to make of that. A servant arrived with breakfast. Fresh bread, honeyed porridge, smoked fish, and a small pot of tea that steamed fragrant and dark. More food than Sibella typically saw in a day. When she tried to thank the girl, young, perhaps 16, with a dusting of freckles across her nose, she received only a nervous nod before the servant fled. "They don't know what to make of me," Sibella realized. "The bride who isn't a bride. The prisoner who isn't a prisoner." She understood the feeling perfectly. After eating, she explored. No one stopped her. No guards shadowed her steps or redirected her toward approved corridors. She wandered through the keep's labyrinthine passages, past armories and storerooms and a massive kitchen where cooks shouted over bubbling pots and roasting meat. She found a training yard where warriors sparred with vicious efficiency, their movements too fast to be entirely human. She discovered a library that made her breathing stop. 3 stories of books spiraling upward, connected by wrought iron staircases and lit by windows cut directly into the mountain's face. Everywhere she went, she felt eyes on her, curious, suspicious, assessing. But no one confronted her until she stumbled into the healer's wing. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was sharp, female, and thoroughly unimpressed. Sibella turned to find a woman about her own age blocking the doorway, arms crossed over a leather vest that did nothing to hide the impressive muscles beneath. Her hair was shorn close to her skull, and a jagged scar ran from her left temple to her jaw, bisecting her eyebrow and giving her a permanent expression of skeptical challenge. "I was just exploring. This wing is for the injured. Unless you're bleeding somewhere I can't see, turn around." Sibella bristled. "The king told me I could move freely." "The king says many things." The woman stepped closer, and Sibella caught the faint shimmer in her eyes that marked a wolf close to the surface. "But I'm Isolde, head of the king's personal guard. His safety, and the safety of everyone in this keep, is my responsibility. So when a stranger with no wolf and a suspicious story starts wandering into sensitive areas, I take notice." "I don't have a suspicious story. My father's deception is hardly a secret." "Exactly." Isolde's eyes narrowed. "Your father sends a substitution bride to a king whose wolves are dying, and we're supposed to believe it's coincidence? That you just happened to arrive when we're most vulnerable?" The accusation hit like cold water. "You think I'm involved in the attacks?" "I think it's convenient. I think you claim to have no wolf, which means you can't be scented for lies the way the rest of us can. I think—" "Isolde." The new voice came from behind Sibella, and she didn't need to turn to know who it belonged to. That low, rough-edged timbre had already imprinted itself somewhere in her memory. The Alpha King moved past her, positioning himself between Sibella and his guard, with a casualness that somehow made it more pointed. I believe I gave orders that our guest was to be treated with courtesy. Courtesy doesn't mean stupidity, Varin. Isolde didn't back down, though something in her posture shifted. Not submission, but the slight recalibration of one warrior acknowledging another. She could be a plant, a distraction, She's not. How can you possibly? Because I would smell it. The king's voice dropped to something quieter and far more dangerous. You question many things, old friend, and that's why I keep you close. But do not question my ability to detect a threat. A long moment passed. Then Isolde inclined her head, the barest acknowledgement. Fine, but I'm watching her. I'd expect nothing less. Isolde shot Sibella one final look. We're not finished, and strode away down the corridor. When she was gone, the king turned. In daylight, his features seemed less severe, though no less striking. Dark shadows beneath his eyes suggested he'd slept even worse than she had. Forgive Isolde. She's protective. She thinks I'm a spy. She thinks everyone is a spy until proven otherwise. It's kept me alive more than once. He gestured down the corridor. Walk with me. There's something you need to see. He led her deeper into the healer's wing, past rooms where the scent of herbs grew thick and the sounds of labored breathing filtered through closed doors. Finally, he stopped before a chamber at the end of the hall. Prepare yourself. He pushed open the door. The room held 3 beds. Each one contained a figure so still Sibella first thought they were corpses. But no. She could see the shallow rise and fall of chests, the occasional twitch of fingers. These are the survivors, Varen said quietly. The ones we found before the extraction was complete. They're alive, but their wolves are gone, torn out, and they won't wake. Sibella approached the nearest bed. A young man, perhaps 20, with auburn hair and a face that might have been handsome before whatever happened hollowed him out. His skin had a grayish pallor, and dark veins stood out at his temples like cracks in porcelain. What could do this? That's what I need you to help me find. She reached out, hesitating just above the young man's hand. That strange pulse she'd felt when touching Varen flickered at the edge of her awareness, calling to her. If I touch him, I don't know what will happen. That moment when we shook hands, I saw... I don't know how to explain it. Try. Sibella struggled for words. It was like seeing through you. Not physically, but the truth of you. Your wolf. Your wounds. She paused. Your loneliness. The king's expression flickered. Surprise. Quickly masked. You saw all that from a single touch. I don't know if I can control it. I don't even know what it is. There's only one way to find out. She looked at the young man's slack face, the dark veins, and the evidence of something monstrous. Then she thought of 2 decades spent being told she was empty, powerless, and wrong. What if they were all lying? What if this is who I was always meant to be? Sibella took a breath and pressed her palm to the young man's forehead. The world shattered. She was falling. No, being pulled, down through layers of consciousness that had never belonged to her. Darkness swallowed her vision, and then images burst like lightning. The young man running through a forest, fear choking his lungs, a figure emerging from shadows, cloaked in something that swallowed light itself, a hand pressing to his chest, fingers sinking through flesh like it was water, his wolf howling, fighting, and being ripped away, and beneath it all, a voice, cold, ancient, female. The Hollow King cannot protect them. The boneless bride will be my instrument. The old blood wakes, and Valdris will burn. Sibella wrenched her hand back with a gasp, collapsing against the edge of the bed. Her nose was bleeding, Her head screamed with pain. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. What did you see? Varen's voice was urgent but not harsh. Sibella, what did you see? She looked up at him, tasting copper on her lips, the cryptic words still echoing in her skull. The Hollow King, the boneless bride. Someone is coming for you, she whispered. For all of you. And she knows I'm here. 3 days passed in a blur of visions and exhaustion. Each morning, Sibella touched the survivors. Each time, she fell deeper into fragments of memory, flashes of terror, glimpses of their attacker, and whispers of that cold, ancient voice. And each time, Varen was there to catch her when she surfaced, to press cool water into her shaking hands, to wait with uncharacteristic patience while she struggled to translate what she'd seen. The attacker was female, old beyond reckoning. She moved through shadows like water through cracks, and she was hunting something specific. Not just wolves, power. She was feeding, growing stronger with each wolf she consumed. And she knew about Sibella, knew and wanted. The boneless bride, Varen murmured on the third evening, turning the phrase over like a puzzle piece. That's what she called you? They sat in his study, a fire crackling low between them. Sibella had stopped pretending formality days ago. The visions left her too drained for posturing. Now she curled in a leather chair across from the king, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, looking less like a political pawn and more like exactly what she was. A woman in over her head, clinging to the wreckage. Boneless, she laughed without humor. Wolfless, I assume she meant. The Hollow King and the boneless bride. It's almost poetic. Hollow. Varen's jaw tightened. She's not wrong. Sibella looked up sharply. In 3 days, she'd learned to read the king's silences better than most people's speeches. This one carried weight. What do you mean? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he rose, moving to the window where moonlight spilled across the stone floor. My wolf has been diminished since the attacks began. I thought it was stress, exhaustion, the weight of losing my people. His hands clasped behind his back, knuckles white. But it's more than that. Something is pulling at me. The same force that's taking my wolves is already working on me, just slower, more careful. Why didn't you tell me? Because a king who admits weakness doesn't stay king for long. He turned, and the moonlight carved his features into sharp relief. And because I didn't want you to realize exactly how urgent this is, how much I'm gambling on your gift being real. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. Sibella rose from her chair, letting the blanket fall. She crossed to him slowly, giving him time to retreat, to rebuild those walls she'd watched crumble piece by piece over the past days. He didn't move. I spent my whole life being told I was empty, she said quietly, that the place where power should live was just vacant. And maybe that's why I can see what I see. Maybe you need someone hollow to recognize hollowness in others. She stopped an arm's length away. But you're not hollow, Varen. You're wounded. There's a difference. He inhaled sharply. In the firelight, his eyes looked almost human. Tired, uncertain, longing for something he couldn't name. You see too much, he whispered. Apparently that's my gift. The space between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Sibella knew she should step back, maintain the professional distance of their arrangement. She was here for 3 weeks. For freedom. For escape. But when she looked at this king, this fierce, lonely, wounded man who'd seen value in her when no one else had, escape felt less like salvation and more like running away from the first person who'd ever truly seen her. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Varen went rigid with shock. For one horrible heartbeat, she thought she'd misread everything, that she'd ruined the fragile alliance they'd built. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him with urgent strength, and he kissed her back like she was air and he'd been drowning for years. It wasn't gentle. There was too much hunger in it, too much loneliness finally given outlet. His hands tangled in her hair, tilting her head back so he could deepen the kiss, and she felt that same electric pulse from their first handshake, only magnified tenfold, a current running between them that made her gasp against his mouth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "This complicates things," he said, voice strained. "Everything about this is complicated. You're supposed to leave in 3 weeks. That was the deal." Sibella's heart stuttered. "I know. I won't trap you." His voice cracked slightly on the words. "Whatever this is, whatever is happening between us, I meant what I said. You'll have your freedom." "What if I don't want it anymore?" His eyes searched hers, hope and fear warring in their depths. "Don't say that unless you mean it. I can't." He stopped, his throat working. "I've lost too much, Sibella. I can't lose something I never actually had." She cupped his face in her hands, feeling the rough stubble against her palms, the slight tremor that ran through him at her touch. "Ask me again," she said softly. "After we survive whatever's coming. Ask me to stay, and I'll give you my answer." "That's not a promise." "No, but it's hope." He kissed her again, softer this time, almost reverent. "I can work with hope." The attack came the next night. Sibella woke to screaming. She was out of bed before full consciousness caught up, bare feet hitting cold stone as she ran toward the sound. The corridor was chaos. Servants fleeing, guards shouting, the acrid smell of smoke and something darker. Something that made her hollow core ache with recognition. "She's here." Varen appeared at the end of the corridor, half-dressed, a sword in his hand and murder in his eyes. "The east wall," he barked at a passing guard. "How many?" "Just one, Your Majesty, but she's—" The guard's voice broke. "She's walking through our wolves like they're nothing." Sibella grabbed Varen's arm. "It's her, the one from my visions." "I know." His jaw was set, his eyes already distant with battle calculation. "Stay here. Lock yourself in my study. Don't come out until—" "No. Sibella." "She knows me, Varen. She called me by name in those visions. Whatever she wants, I'm part of it." Sibella held his gaze, refusing to flinch. "If I hide, people die. If I face her, maybe I can learn why she's doing this, how to stop her. Or she kills you. Then at least I'll die knowing what I actually am, instead of hiding from it like I did my whole life." A roar echoed from somewhere distant. Wolves in combat, pain and fury mingled together. Varen flinched like the sound had struck him physically. "If I tell you to run," he said finally, "you run. No arguments." "Agreed." They ran together through corridors that grew darker the closer they got to the fighting. Torches flickered and died as they passed, shadows pooling in corners like living things. Sibella felt that cold presence growing stronger, pressing against her awareness like ice against skin. The east courtyard was devastation. Wolves lay scattered across the stones, some dead, others writhing in that horrible gray-veined stasis she recognized from the survivors. In the center stood a figure cloaked in darkness that moved independently of the wind, her face hidden beneath a hood that seemed to swallow light itself. But it was her hands that drew Sibella's horror-struck attention. They were buried wrist-deep in a young wolf's chest, sunk through flesh like it was water. And she was pulling something out. A silvery essence that thrashed and howled as it was torn free. "Ah." The figure's head turned toward them, and Sibella glimpsed ancient eyes in a face that might once have been beautiful before centuries of hunger carved it into something monstrous. "The Hollow King arrives, and he's brought my instrument." Varen shifted, his form blurring, bones cracking, and then a massive silver wolf stood where the man had been, lips peeled back in a snarl that echoed off the stone walls. The woman laughed. "Still trying to be strong, little king? I've been feeding on your wolves for months. Your pack weakens while I grow fat on their power." She released her current victim, letting the body crumple, and spread her arms wide. "But the bride, the boneless bride with the waking blood, she's why I truly came." "What do you want with me?" Sibella's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Want?" The woman drifted closer, shadows trailing behind her like a gown. "I want what your ancestors stole from mine, child. I want the gift that should have been my birthright. I want to finish what I started 400 years ago, when I first learned to take power from those too weak to keep it. 400 years. This creature was ancient, immortal, and somehow connected to Sibella's bloodline. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No, you wouldn't. They buried it so deep, bred it out generation by generation, until finally a child was born with the old blood so dormant everyone assumed it was dead." The woman's smile was terrible. "But I could smell it across 3 territories. The power of the first seers, sleeping in a girl they locked in a tower because she made them afraid." Varen lunged. The woman flicked her wrist and shadows slammed into him mid-leap, hurling him against the courtyard wall with a crack that made Sibella scream. "Don't interfere, little king. This doesn't concern you." The woman turned back to Sibella, reaching out with one corpse-pale hand. "Come with me willingly, child. Let me show you what you truly are. I'll unlock every gift they suppressed, teach you to see through time itself. You could be a goddess among mortals. And if I refuse? Then I'll take what I need from your corpse. It's messier that way, but the power remains." Behind the woman, Sibella saw Varen struggling to rise, his wolf form flickering as he fought against whatever force pinned him. Blood matted his silver fur, but his eyes were fixed on her with fierce trust. "Run," that look said. "Please run." But Sibella was done running. "You want my power?" She stepped forward toward those reaching hands, watching hunger and triumph bloom across that ancient face. "Then come and take it." The woman's hand closed around Sibella's wrist, and Sibella opened, not pulled, not ripped like the wolf essence she'd seen extracted from others. She made a choice in that split second. Instead of resisting the connection, she welcomed it. Let it flood both ways. And she saw. The woman's name was Thessaly, and she'd once been like Sibella, a seer born to a powerful line, gifted with visions that showed truth beneath surface. But 400 years ago, jealous of her sister's greater power, she discovered a way to steal gifts from others, to consume them, to become something no longer human. She'd murdered her way across kingdoms before Sibella's ancestors, the first seers, a line of prophets so powerful kings trembled before them, had bound her, locked her essence away in a prison beneath the mountains, a prison that had finally weakened enough to let her escape, and now she needed the blood of a first seer to complete her transformation, to become truly immortal, unstoppable. "You understand?" Thessaly's voice echoed in her mind, pleased. "Good. Then you know resistance is pointless." "No," Sibella thought back, feeling her own power unfurling for the first time, not dormant, not suppressed, but finally, fully awake. "I understand what you're afraid of." Because she saw that too, in the flood of memories. The binding that had trapped Thessaly for 4 centuries hadn't been created through violence. It had been created through sight, a seer powerful enough to look at Thessaly's true essence and speak what she saw. The first seers hadn't just predicted the future, they'd defined it. Their words had weight. Their visions became reality. And Sibella, last daughter of that broken line, had just discovered she'd inherited the same gift. Number. Thessaly's presence in her mind turned frantic, clawing. You don't know how." Sibella opened her mouth and spoke. I see you, Thessaly of the Hollow. I see the sister you murdered for power. I see the thousands you've consumed. I see the emptiness that will never be filled, no matter how many wolves you devour. Her voice resonated strangely, echoing with harmonics that didn't belong to human speech. And I see your end. The courtyard erupted in light. Sibella had never felt anything like this. Power poured through her, not hers exactly, but channeled through her, borrowed from somewhere ancient and vast. The visions that had always come in fragments now crystallized into perfect clarity. She saw past, present, and future simultaneously. Thessaly's centuries of murder, the wolves she could still save if she acted quickly enough, the moment approaching where everything would be decided. And she saw Varin, finally breaking free from the shadows that pinned him, shifting back to human form and staggering toward her with raw determination. Don't touch me, she called out, her voice still carrying that strange resonance. Not until it's done. Sibella, trust me. He stopped. Blood ran down his face from a gash on his forehead, and his body shook with exhaustion. But he trusted her. Despite everything, against all logic, he trusted her. Thessaly screamed, a sound of pure rage that shattered windows throughout the courtyard. The shadows around her writhed, coalescing into weapons, blades, claws, reaching hands. You think speaking pretty words will stop me? I've devoured seers before. Your gift dies with you. My gift isn't just sight. Sibella's understanding crystallized as she spoke it aloud. It's truth. I see what is, and when I speak it, the world listens. She raised her hand toward Thessaly, feeling the power building to an almost unbearable peak. I see the bonds your sister wove around you 4 centuries ago. I see them still holding, even now, frayed but unbroken. Thessaly faltered. That's impossible. I escaped. You leaked. Through cracks. Partial, weakened, desperate for enough power to break fully free. Sibella's voice rose. But the prison remains, and I see the door. You wouldn't dare. If you seal me again, you seal yourself too. The power required would kill me. I know. I can see that too. Varin made a broken sound. Sibella, no. But Thessaly laughed, ugly and triumphant. Then we've reached an impasse, little seer. You won't sacrifice yourself for a pack that isn't even yours. For a king you've known less than a week. Sibella felt the truth of it pressing against her. Thessaly was right. The sealing would require everything Sibella had. Every drop of power, every fragment of life force. She would burn herself out like a candle thrust into a bonfire, except she looked at Varin, at the wolves scattered across the courtyard, at Isolde, who'd appeared in the doorway with a squad of warriors, ready to fight a battle they couldn't win. She looked at a kingdom that had given her more kindness in 1 week than her own family had in her entire life. And she looked deeper, past the obvious, into the truth beneath. You're wrong, she said slowly. I don't have to seal you alone. What? The first seers worked together. That's how they bound you originally. Not 1 seer, but 7, combining their gifts. Sibella's heart raced as the vision clarified. And wolves have bonds too. Pack bonds. Connections that let them share strength. Varen's eyes widened with understanding. If your pack gives me their power willingly, Sibella continued, I can channel it, not to seal you, to unmake you, to finish what my ancestors started. They would never, Thessaly snarled. I've killed dozens of their kin. They hate you, outsider, interloper. They don't know me. Sibella turned to face the wolves who'd gathered at the courtyard's edges, warriors, servants, elders, all watching with mixed fear and confusion. But they know their king. They know he brought me here to help. She looked at Varen, her heart in her throat. Tell them, Ask them to trust me. Just this once. Varen didn't hesitate. He shifted to his wolf form, raised his head, and howled. Not a cry of battle or mourning. Something deeper. Older. A call that resonated with pack bonds forged over generations. One by one, the wolves answered. Sibella felt it like a flood, warmth pouring into that hollow space inside her, filling the emptiness with borrowed strength. Dozens of wolves, then scores, their power freely given, channeled through the king who loved them into the seer who would save them. Thessaly's face contorted with fear. No, no. I see you, Sibella said for the final time, and I see your end. She spoke the truth, and the world listened. Light exploded outward, not harsh, but warm, golden, like sunrise after endless night. It passed through the wolves without harm, but where it touched Thessaly, the ancient creature burned, not with fire, but with truth. Every lie she'd told herself for 4 centuries, every justification, every denial, all of it stripped away, leaving only what she actually was. A frightened, jealous woman who'd traded her humanity for power and found it hollow. Please, Thessaly whispered, her form dissolving at the edges. I just wanted to matter. I know, Sibella said softly, but you chose wrong. The light consumed her. And then, there was nothing but ash. Drifting on a wind that smelled suddenly of spring, Sibella collapsed. She woke in Varen's bed. Not hers. She recognized the darker furs, the scent of pine and something uniquely him that had become achingly familiar. Sunlight streamed through windows, warm and golden, and for a moment she simply lay there, marveling at the fact that she was alive to feel it. You're awake. Varen sat in a chair beside the bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and stubble covered his jaw. But when she turned her head toward him, his expression transformed into something so raw with relief that her chest tightened. How long? Her voice came out hoarse, scraped. 3 days. He moved to the bed's edge, close but not touching, as if afraid she might shatter. The healers weren't sure you'd wake at all. You gave everything you had, Sibella. You nearly... His voice broke. You nearly died for us. For a pack you didn't belong to. For a king you'd known less than 2 weeks. Seemed like the thing to do. He laughed, watery and ragged. You're impossible. So I've been told. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Then Varen took her hand, cradling it between both of his like something precious. The wolves you saved, the ones in the healer's wing, they woke when Thessaly died. All of them. Whatever she'd taken was returned. His throat worked. You gave us back our people, Sibella. You saved my pack. Our arrangement, she started, but he shook his head. Forget the arrangement. The gold, the papers, the 3 weeks, none of it matters anymore. His pale gray gaze held hers. I told you I'd ask you to stay after we survived, so I'm asking. Not as a king demanding alliance, not as a man calling in debts. Just... He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Stay, please, because I love you, and I can't imagine facing another day without you beside me. The words hit her like a wave, terrifying, overwhelming, and somehow exactly right. You love me, she repeated stupidly, hopelessly, completely. Since the moment you told me my father was definitely stupid. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. I tried to resist it, told myself you deserve better than a hollow king with a broken pack. But then you went and saved us all, and I realized, I don't want to be noble about this. I want you, whatever way I can have you. Sibella thought about her tower at Harken Manor, the years of silence, of invisibility, of being told she was nothing. Then she thought about this place, This harsh, beautiful fortress where a king had looked at her and seen treasure where others saw trash, where she'd discovered power she never knew she possessed, where she'd finally become herself. Yes, she whispered. Varen's breath caught. Yes? Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I love you too. Yes to all of it. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. Ask me to marry you. Sibella, hearken. Will you? Yes. He kissed her like the world was ending and beginning simultaneously, and Sibella kissed him back with a lifetime of loneliness finally dissolving into joy. The ceremony took place under a full moon, in the same courtyard where Sibella had faced Thessaly. The stones had been scrubbed clean, new torches lit, garlands of mountain flowers strung between pillars. But traces of the battle remained, scorch marks that wouldn't fade, cracks in the flagstones where power had erupted. Sibella was glad. She didn't want to forget what it had cost to get here. She wore silver at Varen's request, a gown that flowed like water, catching the moonlight until she seemed to glow from within. Her hair was loose, threaded with tiny white blossoms, and around her throat hung a pendant Varen had given her that morning. A wolf and an eye intertwined, the symbol of their merged houses. The pack filled the courtyard. Every wolf in Valdris, warriors and servants, elders and children, had come to witness their king take a mate. Isolde stood at the front, her expression still skeptical, but tempered now with grudging respect. She'd visited Sibella during her recovery, standing awkwardly by the door until Sibella had invited her in. They'd talked for hours, about duty, about trust, about the impossibility of belonging somewhere you were never supposed to be. You're still strange, Isolde had said finally, but I suppose we need strange. Someone to see what the rest of us can't. It was, Sibella had realized, the closest thing to acceptance she was likely to get. Now, standing before the assembled pack, she watched Varen approach. He wore black trimmed with silver, his dark hair combed back, his jaw freshly shaved. But his eyes were the same, storm gray, intense, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. I claim this woman as my mate, he said, his voice carrying across the silent courtyard. Not by conquest or arrangement, but by choice. Her choice and mine. She came to us a stranger, sent by those who undervalued her. She leaves tonight as our queen. He extended his hand. Sibella took it. I accept this king as my mate, she said, and felt the ancient magic of the pack bond responding to her words, recognizing her, welcoming her, weaving her into the fabric of something larger than herself. I pledge my sight to his service, my truth to his people, my heart to his keeping, from this night until my last. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. Power flooded through her, not painful this time, but warm, golden, a connection to every wolf present that hummed with shared strength. And then, as one, the pack knelt, Isolde first, her scarred face solemn, then the warriors behind her, row after row, heads bowed in acknowledgement of their new queen, the servants, the elders, the children who didn't fully understand but followed their parents' lead. An entire pack, kneeling to the woman they'd been told was worthless. Sibella's vision blurred with tears. Rise, Varen commanded, his voice thick with emotion. Rise and welcome your queen. They rose, and they howled, a sound of joy and belonging that echoed off the mountains and shook the stars themselves. Later, much later, when the celebration had finally quieted and they lay tangled together in furs that now belonged to both of them, Varen traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. Tell me something, he murmured. Anything. When you touched Thessaly, when you saw her memories, did you see anything about us? About our future? Sibella smiled against his chest. I saw possibilities. Branches of what might be. And? And in every single one where I chose to stay, I saw happiness. Not perfect, not without struggle, but real. She lifted her head to look at him. I saw children with your eyes and my stubbornness. I saw years of partnership. I saw growing old together. Still arguing, still laughing. Sounds exhausting. Sounds like exactly what I want. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. I still can't believe they sent you to me, the sister they thought was worthless. They sent the wrong daughter, Sabella agreed, and got exactly what they deserved. Nothing. While I got everything. She thought about that. About the tower, the years of silence, the carriage ride she'd taken expecting death, and finding instead a world she never knew existed, a power she never knew she had, a love she never dared imagine. They wanted to punish me, she said quietly. Sending me here. They thought they were disposing of a problem. Instead, Sabella smiled, feeling the pack bond thrumming through her veins, feeling Varn's heartbeat steady beneath her palm, feeling for the first time in her life like she was exactly where she belonged. Instead, they set me free. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.